Smith History. Discussing history in greater detail. Hello and welcome back to Smith History. In this episode, we will be discussing some of the what-ifs around the Second World War and specifically Nazi Germany. Well, lots of people would view what-ifs around history. They wouldn't view them as very important because history is the facts, but they're facts that actually have happened. They're not. It isn't like science where, where bacteria can change and viruses can change and chemical reactions can take place and different chemical reactions can take place. It's not like that. It's different. There's a certain fact, So most people wouldn't view what-ifs on the same ratio, but it is important to realize that we do learn from history. And if we can see that history is repeating itself, what could we do to change the course of events? Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the idea it's happened in multiple films, it's been written into books, it's everywhere. Go back in time and kill baby Hitler. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about something like that. I'm talking about things that could have quite easily have actually happened at that time. Because, the Hitler family was living quite comfortably. It is unlikely that Hitler would have died younger. Of course, if he hadn't proceeded down the dictatorship road, he probably would have lived a lot longer. But what I'm talking about here is, for example, the first thing I'm going to say is, if Hitler had been accepted into the Vienna Fine School of Fine Arts, because this is not a collective, multiple persons acting together, different ideas, unbeknownst to each other. This is a single individual writing, "Unfortunately, you have been rejected," instead of writing, "Congratulations, you've been accepted." Because I think we all agree Hitler would most likely not become a dictator had he have gotten into the Vienna School of Fine Arts. And this is important because this is a single point. I'm not saying that we should let everybody into an art school just in case they become a dictator. I'm not saying that. I'm saying simply, this is a single individual, and that's not their fault or anything, but this is the thing that could have happened. Then of course you've got the one that is talked about quite a lot. This is talked about quite a lot, and this is if the Reichstag building had not been burnt down. And whether you look at it as the Nazis never had the idea, maybe if you say that the Nazis burnt the building down and blamed it on the communists, then if the Nazis never got that idea, or if it was burnt down by communists, then the communists never got that idea. Point is, if the Reichstag building had never been burnt down, then you have to ask yourself, would the tide have turned? Because at this time, communists are the only party, realistically, they're the only party capable of having any sort of position. So before this, Hitler really isn't. He has quite a lot of power, but he's not a complete dictator. He's still, the Communist Party is still there. It's still quite a large party, and there's still many seats. They're the biggest enemy of the Nazis. So the question is, of course, if this had happened, then possibly it might have happened that the communists would have been the party that they could have out of the Nazis, and maybe the Nazis would have never been able to bring back their position of power. Then, of course, there's the biggest one, and it's England's position. Now, this is not really discussed as much in history, and it's this point. France, they looked at Britain, they looked at Hitler, and they said, he's building up weapons. We're going to attack him. He's weak now. If we get England's help, we will attack him and we will subdue him. And yes, it is positive they would have succeeded. This is a definite fact. But the French are saying, well, we're not going to do this on our own because we could fail. And all we've done is simply lower our own army while his army is still being built up. So the French approach the British and say, let's go and attack him now. Let's simply not attack him, because this is the point. This is directly against the Treaty of Versailles. So this isn't just any old attack. The Germans had pretty much signed a warrant for their own arrest, and now they've committed the crime. So now they are allowed to go in there and they're allowed to stop them. But the English decided not to. So they said no. They said no, we won't go in there. We won't go into Germany. We won't stop Hitler. So this essentially is a very important point, because if this hadn't happened, if England had agreed with France, then things would have been a lot different. Because it is very likely that Hitler would have been stopped before he could rearm, and then very likely it would have happened that there would have been no World War II, because there wouldn't have been any rearmament, and the millions of lives that the Nazis took might have been saved. Now, one of the big discussions that people always have is, what if the Germans had won the war? Now, well, in the Second World War, it is definite that it is very likely that none of us will be here. So unless you're able to trace your ancestry directly back to, Nazis, and that's all the way back, all of your great-grandparents, or all of your grandparents, or all of your great-great-grandparents, then, yeah, it's very likely that, parents or grandparents or whatever would never have met, and some of them might have been killed, and, yeah, we would be living in tyranny right now, probably. But then, of course, what people don't look at it as much is what would happen if Germany had won the First World War. Because we all agree that the First World War is a direct cause of the Second World War, because by losing the First World War and Germany having to sign the Treaty of Versailles, and not just the Treaty of Versailles, but the damages that the First World War had caused, even just on their economy anyway, that ultimately caused the Second World War. But what would happen if Germany had won the First World War? Because while in the Second World War, yes, there would have been tyranny. In the First World War, it wasn't like that. That wasn't the position. That was not what was wanted. The Germans weren't talking about world domination or anything like that, or mass extermination in the First World War. So it's very likely that things would have just gone back to normal if Germany had won the First World War. And maybe there wouldn't have even been any reparations to be paid. So the world may have never had a Second World War. Well, thank you for that. If you have any ideas for what ifs for the Second World War, for example, if the SA were planning a coup and it succeeded, or if Hitler was assassinated. If you have any suggestions for what ifs for the Second World War, please say so below in the comments. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the channel for more videos. Smith History is an original Smith Co. series. You might also like Smith Facts or Did You Know videos.